What's up, everybody? I'm Late to the Gamer, and it's been a couple weeks. And today I just kind of wanted to go into addressing some of the biggest issues that people seem to be constantly bringing up when it comes to Spider-Man 2. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. Once the game was complete, I was able to just kind of put it down. I've 100%ed my game, I've got my platinum, and quite honestly, I wish there was more to do. But that's not even one of the biggest complaints to the game. I don't think that actually warrants a complaint. You can get it completed in a good amount of time. The side missions aren't tedious, but there are a few glaring issues with the game that I think some of them actually have some good merit to them. So let's just hop right into it. The number one thing that I keep on hearing over and over and over again is complaints about the game's new combat system. It's more adopted from Spider-Man Miles Morales, but to be quite honest with you, I didn't have a problem with that new setup. I even remember seeing, I think it was Mutahar say this, some ordinary gamer, which kind of surprised me because he really loved Marvel Spider-Man's combat, but I also did appreciate the changes that were made in Spider-Man Miles Morales because the speed of the combat is very different. Being able to slow down time and methodically pick your gadgets mid-combat, I felt was almost like a crutch in the game. And it made changing up and switching up to what you needed and wanted very easy. Plus, you had so many of these gadgets that you can just keep on going over and over and over again. While this new cooldown system forces you to have to pick and choose because you have limited options. Because once you use the options up, they will need to refill. When you get a knockout or you use a finisher, you'll get back one of those abilities. Very much the same as the very first Spider-Man game, except you had twice as many operating at the same time with 3 charges each. Having 24 gadgets on hand to use at any time with the added protection of being able to slow down time made large brawls trivial. And it also meant you didn't have to think on your feet as quickly. With this new modified system, you're constantly having to go into the attack to constantly keep up your few skills in order to actually maintain the ability to fight your large mobs in the game. And I think that's what kind of leads into what the second problem is, but I'm going to get into that in a moment. I kind of feel like when I played the first Marvel Spider-Man game, I had a much easier time when it came down to picking and choosing because I had the option of an impact web, or I can use web to cling people to each other. And without those options, it actually removes the ability to take down multiple enemies at one time and made it so that you have to actually dodge more. It's silly as that may seem, that slight difference has actually sped up the combat, I believe. So while I do appreciate the opinion that people really like Marvel Spider-Man and they really love the combat system in it, and don't get me wrong, I did love the combat system in it. This new streamlined system means that you no longer have the crutch of being able to slow down time and get a look at what's happening around you. Sure, it is for a few seconds, but that few seconds is a huge difference when you've got 10 or 15 enemies coming at you at one time. You get to actually go impact web to this one, to this one, to this one. While in this new version, you may look down in the bottom corner and see that you only have one charge of the gadget available. And since you only got that one charge, you've got to either use it now or build up that bar. You're gonna have to think on your feet because there is no slowing down time, and you either are gonna have to run out that situation, dodge your way out that situation, or be really good with your counters. But like I said, this actually leads into the second problem, and that was the stealth. The stealth gameplay in Marvel Spider-Man 2, it shouldn't even be there. I felt like when Miles Morales came out, it had a very good balance of how stealth should be. You didn't have as many gadgets, but you also didn't want to go into a situation where you were fighting 15 or 16 enemies at once. It was dangerous for you to do so, and it made the game that much harder. So when you did get into a stealth situation, you tried to take advantage of it because going into the middle and starting the fight means that you had to be flawless basically if you were going to survive that situation. I remember a couple later in the game that was storyline oriented, and as you were going into these hideouts and getting into these fights, if you weren't going stealthily at it, you were fighting 5 or 6 dudes with shields. You really had to focus on these enemies if you didn't take them out silently. And I feel like in Spider-Man 2, you didn't really have to worry about that. You can make zip lines everywhere, pull enemies out. You can get them to all run to the other side of the room, and they would just sit there and let you pick people off. There wasn't any challenge to it. I'm not sure whether it was Miles Morales or if it was the original where you would have these stealth missions where you could not be seen a single time. And getting 3 stars on those were some of the most fun that I've had in these Spider-Man games, because it taught you how to be very quick on the stealth, how to be very efficient, and if you are seen, you fail. Can you do this in the next 90 seconds? There are 10 people down at the bottom. And I loved it because it taught you to path and think outside the box. Whereas in this game, you just kind of make your own lane because no one ever really looks up. And when they do, it's probably too late because you've already moved on. And the only way they're going to look up is if you're constantly pulling people to the same location, or if too many people in the same area realize that someone is knocked out. But if you pick somebody up and you put them on the wall, there wasn't any notice of like, hey, nobody's here, maybe we should start looking up. They would only react like that if somebody was knocked out. And lastly, what I think may cause a little controversy is the game is very bottom heavy, and some of the most fun situations in this game are actually the boss fights. They are well thought out boss fights. All of them. Well, okay, not all of them. I don't know how to feel about that. I do have a couple that I don't really care for. Well, one in particular, but they are imaginative. But after your initial fight with Sandman, it's going to be a long time until you get into your very first official boss fight. And I'm telling you, I did not play the game where I went through every district immediately and I did everything I could. No, if I found that I really wanted an upgrade and I was kind of close to getting it, then I'd go do a couple side missions. But I never focused on the side missions like Marvel Spider-Man 1 made you do, where you would get those sections where you would complete some story and then Peter would go, maybe I should check up on the city. And after you spent a good amount of time doing stuff in the city, then you would get a call and the next mission would begin. In this game, there wasn't any slowdown like that. So you just kind of went from mission to mission to mission to mission, and then eventually you get this first boss fight and you've got all these skills now, and he just beats the living crap out of you. I don't know if I was the only one with that experience, but that first major boss fight was rough. And I think that a couple street level villains thrown in earlier in the game would have actually spread that out a little bit better. Honestly, I would have loved to fight like 2 or 3 or even 4 more bosses, but I understand the logistics of trying to squeeze in. I mean, this game does have 10 boss fights, but 2 of them are optional, number 1. So this game has 8 boss fights. A couple more optional boss fights in this game, I think I would have fell in love even more. I would probably still be playing it. I'd probably be playing it all over again. But I have put this game down because now that I don't have anything else to do, there's no New Game Plus, I don't really want to go back into it, knowing that I'm going to have to put in about 6 hours of gameplay, 6 to 7 hours of gameplay before I get my first opportunity to even fight a boss. And then after that, they're going to be back to back to back to back to back to back to back. And I feel like this game's pacing was really good for the story, but left me really wanting a little bit more. And I think that that difference between Spider-Man for PS4, the original one that came out, and this game is that you had all these additional side bosses and additional side characters and additional side missions that could end in a boss fight. Like, I don't know if you remember, but Taskmaster was a hell of a good boss fight. It was a damn solid boss fight. In this new game, you kind of like, you do these side missions, you complete them, and it kind of all felt like not so much side missions, but like additional side games, like I was playing Kingdom Hearts. And that's just the one thing. Like, I really felt like this game was going to be game of the year for me. But after playing it, after completing it, after 100%ing it, I do love it, but I don't think it's nearly as strong as a candidate as I would have guessed it to be. And that really is because streamlining it so much, they didn't leave themselves room to really expand on any of these side quests. But I expected more than doing all these side missions and only having 2 confrontations out of the end of it. I thought there was going to be more of a neighborhood Spider-Man taking down different gangsters in different areas. And I get it, some time has passed. We got a villain or 2 that's changed their ways, but give me some other options. There are some other options. I know there's some other options. There have to be some other options. Spider-Man's got the silliest, largest rogues gallery, just random ass supervillains. I don't know. Like, I feel like there was more that could have been done, and I know that as we get our DLC, we will see more. But for a base game, I felt like they tried to be so nice with giving the trophies away and not giving you anything that felt impossible to complete, so that it was more accessible for everybody else. They took away some of the difficulty and saved that difficulty for primarily the boss fights. And because the boss fights are so bottom heavy, it it kind of leaves everybody else who didn't feel like they were being challenged with this great big gap in the beginning that can only be held by the story. And once you've completed the game one time, you're not going to be as hooked onto the story. You're just going to try to pump up the difficulty, but you will still have that problem of a large gap of time from the beginning of the game till about that midway point where there is nobody that you have to come in contact with and you have to have a big showdown with that comes around to actually test your mettle. And I mean, those I honestly think are the three biggest issues this game had. And don't forget, like I said, I love the game, but I'm pretty much done playing it, and that should say something to you because there's other games that I still hop back on and play, but this is one that's left me to the point where everything has been done in about 50 hours. I took my sweet time, and because of that, there's no reason for me to revisit it. It's not like the stealth sections have drawn me back to challenge me where I want to try to do something different. It's not like I can just hop back in and know that a couple hours into the game I'll be facing some bosses. Nothing like that at all. I'm just going to be going in, fighting some main story missions, doing some side quests that mostly lead to a cutscene or clothing or something along those lines, and then I'm back to the drawing board again, waiting till I get to the end of the game where I go through like this mini boss rush of a boss, a mission or two, a boss, a mission, a boss, a mission, a boss. And while that is fun, that's what I wanted to see in the first half of the game as well. There's no reason the first boss that we come across stomps our ass in the way that boss stomps our ass in, because we're just not prepared for going into the situation. Hell, it is giving us tutorial pop-ups during that fight, and we are hours into the game. But that's just my humble opinion. I'm Late to the Gamer. Let me know what you guys think. This is Console and Control Gaming. I hope you guys have a great day.